Clash Royale is probably the hardest game to balance. Why? Because there are 121 cards. That's a lot! Despite such a huge card pool, Clash Royale has done a good job to balance most cards recently. But there are still 15 cards left which need a buff, nerf, or a rework. So, one of the first cards that is in desperate need of a buff is the Hunter. Unfortunately, the Hunter is only used with Royal Giant decks, but recently he's getting replaced even in those decks. Why though? Well, you see, the Furnace Evolution seems to be a much better card in Royal Giant decks. It synergizes better with other cards and its evolution is much stronger. The only problem is the Vines spell. Vines basically does what the Evolved Hunter does, but better! As a spell, it's much more versatile and game-breaking on offense and defense. Other ranged cards like Baby Dragon, Musketeer, or Evolved Wizard are just a lot better than the Hunter at the moment. Therefore, the Hunter sees no use in other decks too. Currently, the Hunter is in such a bad situation that both him and his evolved version have a near 0% use rate on ladder. But what can be a good buff to the Hunter? I feel like maybe a hit speed increase buff would really help the card. This can help him take down tanks much more quickly, as well as win 1v1s against other troops. While the Hunter is not in a good spot as a ranged card, our next card on the list is just broken as a ranged unit. One of the cards that desperately needs a nerf is the Goblin Machine. It's super annoying in that one Goblin Giant P.E.K.K.A. spam deck. The Goblin Machine feels like a broken card if you combine it with a rage spell. Its rockets literally nuke everything! Imagine destroying a bomber with a single rocket from the Goblin Machine. It definitely feels unfair. The Goblin Machine has made a bad reputation for itself for being used in only toxic decks. And well, that's actually true. Look at what archetypes are running the Goblin Machine. Goblin Giant P.E.K.K.A. and Elixir Golem. Those are literally the two most brain-dead decks in the game. The Goblin Machine boasts a high 53% win rate with a 7% use rate. If those are the stats of the normal version, imagine what would happen if the Goblin Machine gets an evolution. The card needs a nerf, and a big one. In my opinion, the rocket damage needs to be nerfed. It's way too much right now and shouldn't be able to nuke out troops just like that. I personally hate the card and the decks it's used in. If you too hate this obnoxious, stupid deck, then make sure to drop a rocket on the like and subscribe button. A card that I would really like to see get a rework is the Rune Giant. While being really strong on release, the Rune Giant was nerfed heavily a few months back, and since then she's fallen off tremendously. There are absolutely no decks in the game that run the Rune Giant, and she has a horrible win rate of 41% with a 0% use rate. Those are the worst stats for any card in the game. But the issue with the Rune Giant is that if you buff her, you might make her too strong, because her ability boosts the attacks of other troops as well. A bad change to her can make her totally broken. That's why I feel like she needs a total rework to her card design. Maybe boost her individual stats to make her a good troop on her own, and slightly nerf the boosting ability if she becomes too strong later on? What do you think? Our next card which needs a buff is the Phoenix. After some brutal nerfs over the years, the Phoenix has become one of the worst air cards in Clash Royale. No deck really uses the Phoenix anymore. There are just so many better flying troops available. Baby Dragon, Inferno Dragon, Flying Machine, Spirit Empress, etc. The special thing about the Phoenix was her respawn mechanic. But guess what? After multiple nerfs, the Phoenix Egg is now basically useless and never hatches. This makes her a basic flying troop, which is easy to counter. I mean, give me one reason to use the Phoenix over something like a Mega Minion or a Baby Dragon. The Phoenix is in a terrible state right now in Clash Royale. It currently sits at a 1% use rate in the game, which is really bad. It desperately needs a big buff or an evolution to make it viable. I would really consider improving the speed of the Phoenix, because it feels very slow. Also, the hit speed can use a buff as well. That will at least allow the Phoenix to be on par with the next card on the list, which is so strong that it might need an immediate nerf next season. The next card that needs a nerf right away is the Evolved Baby Dragon. I do understand that the card is still new and people are testing it out, but a 15% use rate with a 52% win rate on top ladder is crazy. With Graveyard absolutely broken in the meta, the Evolved Baby Dragon is seeing a surge in popularity. Its ability to slow down the enemy push and speed up yours is really game-breaking. The Baby Dragon is extremely versatile, and its ability makes it useful on both offense and defense. In fact, its versatility is the reason why it's used in a number of archetypes and not just Graveyard. P.E.K.K.A. Bridge Spam, Golem Beatdown, Lava Loon, etc. all are using the Baby Dragon evolution, and it's finding great success in those decks. I don't think it needs a very big nerf because its popularity is kind of boosted by how strong the Graveyard is, but a small nerf to his ability can make it quite balanced while still preserving its place in some decks. A balance change to the Baby Dragon should be easy enough for the dev team, considering how easy of a card it is to balance. But the same can't be said about our next card on the list. One of the cards that is incredibly hard to balance is 3 Musketeers. The card's design is quite broken in my opinion, and it should never have been introduced in the first place. It's a card that will become broken even with the slightest buff. And trust me, no one wants a 3 Musketeers meta. But if you don't buff the card, it will remain dead like it is at the moment. 3 Musketeers has a bad 1% use rate in the game, which justifies how bad they have been throughout the years. But how do you even rework the 3 Musketeers? It's probably the hardest card to balance in Clash Royale, because if you change the base stats of the Musketeers, then the regular Musketeer gets changed too. I actually found one of the coolest ways to rework the 3 Musketeers on Reddit. This was the guy's suggestion for a rework, and I honestly love it. What do you think about it? Barbarians are another card that need a good buff. Right now, they are way too easy to counter and provide absolutely no value on defense or offense. The biggest issue is that they cost 5 elixir, but have weak individual stats. This makes them vulnerable to spells like Fireball and Poison for a positive 1 elixir trade. Even the Barbarians evolution isn't seen in many decks other than Lava Loon. Some bridge spam decks use them, but it's because they don't have any other evolution. They are good at countering tanks, but if you get predicted by a spell, you're cooked. And because they drop so close to each other, they're extremely weak against splash damage units. The cost of Barbarians is just way too much at this point. Why would you use Barbarians when other swarms like Guards and Goblin Gang exist? They have the same function, can apply pressure on offense, as well as cost 2 elixir less. The Barbarians have a terrible 47% win rate with a nearly 0% use rate on ladder. They need a buff, and reducing their elixir cost to 4 seems like a valid choice. Despite being bad, they counter a very broken card in the meta, which happens to be next on our list. A card that most players complain about is the Boss Bandit. Everyone would like to see a nerf to the Boss Bandit, and well, that's valid. Costing 6 elixir, she has a ton of hit points, which feels absolutely unfair, and her continuous dashing mechanic makes her extremely annoying to counter. Basically, if you don't have swarms, there is no way to stop her. You're 100% losing against the Boss Bandit if you don't have something like Guards or a Goblin Gang to stop her, because her dashes deal so much damage that they can wipe out a mini-tank instantly. The community really wants to see a nerf to the Boss Bandit, especially her hit points should be reduced. That much HP for 6 elixir, a broken dash ability, 3 card cycle and high damage, all in one card, is just insane. Literally every bridge spam deck in the game uses the Boss Bandit, and it's really annoying. A serious nerf to her hit points would be good, and I'm sure no one will complain about it. Another card that will benefit a lot from a rework will be the Clone spell, quite possibly the worst spell of all time in Clash Royale. The Clone spell has seen some balance changes throughout the years, but none seem to make it viable. The problem is that the meta in Clash Royale is always spell heavy, and with a ton of spells in the meta, Clone suffers, because the Clone troops get wiped out in an instant. So popular spells like Arrows, Poison, Tornado all counter the Clone spell. Clone spell currently costs 3 elixir, but the value it provides is 0 in most cases. It has a 1% use rate with a bad 46% win rate. The question now arises, should it be changed to 2 elixir instead, and maybe reduce the number of units cloned? Or perhaps just turn the spell into some kind of a troop that clones your units? Well, that would be funny. But at the end of the day, the Clone spell definitely needs a rework in order to become relevant. The next card that I would like to see get a buff is the Magic Archer. He's one of the most fun and high-skill cards to use in the game, but unfortunately he's been overshadowed by other ranged troops like the Furnace, Musketeer, Baby Dragon, or Flying Machine. Also, the high use rates of Fireball, Vines, and Poison are further denying him the place in the meta. only a few minor cycle decks use the Magic Archer nowadays, but in other decks, he's just a dead card. Currently, the Magic Archer has a 2% use rate with a terrible 47% win rate. This is really bad for a ranged card. The Magic Archer can use a small damage buff, in my opinion, to make himself viable again. This would make him better at dealing against enemy pushes on defense, while also making him a threat on offense. I would like to see him used in more decks other than minor cycle, because he is a skillful card and you need to be very precise about his placements. Buffing a high skill card in a good way to keep toxic cards out of the meta, to be honest. One of those toxic cards is the Vines spell, which definitely needs a nerf right now. The newest card in Clash Royale has taken over the meta, and I don't recall seeing a more overpowered spell. Supercell really thought to just put the Evolved Hunters mechanics in a spell, but also make it target 3 troops. Apart from that, the spell can literally stun and reset attacks of troops too, while dealing insane damage itself. If that's not broken, I don't know what is. Vines already got an emergency nerf recently, but guess what? It did absolutely nothing! And Vines is still broken like crazy. The spell literally has a 45% use rate on top ladder even after the nerf, and with a 53% win rate, it's the most dominant card in the meta, without a doubt. I would really like Supercell to reduce the damage further, and the card should not be able to reset the attacks of troops by any means. I'm 100% sure Vines is gonna get nerfed pretty hard soon. I just hope it'll be enough. The only spell I can remember being as dominant as Vines was the Void spell on release. But now it needs a big rework. After some heavy nerfs, Void has become irrelevant and now has a 0% use rate with a 48% win rate. The issue with Void is that it's really situational. If it manages to hit a single troop only, it could literally destroy it in an instant. But if somehow your opponent predicts your Void and placed a troop nearby the ranged unit, then neither of those will die. But your 3 elixir will be wasted. Being situational is not good for Void, as spells are often considered as reliable sources of damage. A rework is definitely needed for Void, and we might be seeing one definitely in the future. The reason I say that is because the Clash Royale team seems to be working on it, as mentioned in one of their tweets of the lead game designer of Clash Royale. So, how would you like to see the Void getting reworked? One card I would like to see get a buff going forward is the Bomber. The evolved version of the Bomber is absolutely terrible. It never seems to get any shots on the tower nowadays. I mean, it was literally its special ability, and now it's nerfed to oblivion. The Bomber is now only seen with some Goblin drill decks and maybe a couple of beatdown decks, but other than that, it basically sucks. The evolved Bomber has a 1% use rate and a 48% win rate. Both of these stats are not good for an evolution. I would really love to see a range buff to the Bomber so that he can get his shots aligned on the tower more frequently. I think it'll make him pretty balanced in the meta. A card that has been consistently strong and now needs a nerf is the Prince. A major part of the Clash Royale community, including me, thinks that the Prince has dodged a nerf for way too long. And it's true. Ever since he got a buff last year, the Prince has been really strong in Giant, Mega Knight, and Goblin Giant decks. These decks are really annoying, and having a Prince charging behind these tanks is never a good sign. It feels like he always gets a charge on the tower with the slightest HP left, which makes him feel really unbalanced. The Prince has an 11% use rate on ladder with a 52% win rate. Those numbers are actually insane for a supporting card. I would really like to see a range nerf to the Prince so that he can't get those charges so often on the tower. The card that needs a rework the most at the moment is the Barbarian Hut. It's the absolute worst card in the game by far, but sources tell me that it may be getting a rework soon, just how the Furnace and Goblin Hut got a rework too. But until then, it remains as one of the 15 cards you should never upgrade in Clash Royale. But what are the other 14? To find out, click on this video.